And we are live.
Hello.
Mark, exactly. You are clearly not in your usual location. You are somewhere exotic, I hope, somewhere warm.
No, neither exotic nor warm. I'm actually not far from where I live. I'm about 15 minutes away. But I had to. I actually have a meeting here at 7:15 as well. So it's just all timed itself right, Laura.
So we're gonna be swift. That's what you were saying.
Well, an example of staying human under pressure is sometimes really good planning.
Well, there we go. Perfect interlude. So what does perfect planning look like to you, Mark?
It looks like allowing for when things can go wrong, but ensuring you have a plan to deal with a lot of different things that are going on. But always,
how do you do that, then, Mark?
Well, I've learned that you can't control all things. You can try and plan to control all things in the best way possible. So, like, I was given it was down the country, as I said, in the talk today, and 3/4 way through the talk, my clicker, the thing for moving on the slides and stuff, decided that it had enough and it didn't want to do anymore. And in fairness, I had used it the previous day, so it had been overused and being used for 2 days in a row. And but you can't plan for that, so you just have to be able to adapt and go with it and do it, right? But you still plan by making sure you have all the technology and it's working in advance. So for me, like, you're doing talks, you're giving a talk. If you aren't prepared for the things you have to do and for the things that might go wrong, then there's where you lose it, because there's where you lose being human under pressure, because the pressure begins to overwhelm you in those spaces.
So, but do you think is it all down to the prep, or is it sometimes that we just get caught up in it and we don't notice?
Well, I absolutely like. Is it all down to the prep? No, because things go wrong, and you can be there in a situation and somebody starts asking questions or something happens and suddenly you're not prepared for this. What do you do? How do you cope? And it becomes a how do you cope piece, right? And I don't think maybe the public speaking isn't a great example for where things don't work, because I'm quite comfortable in that space now. To the point where I was going in yesterday, I was actually nervous. I was like, why am I nervous? I'm never nervous doing these things. What's going on here? And I was actually, thinking, what if it doesn't work? What if it goes wrong? I was like, wait a second. That's me thinking my way into trouble. That's me thinking my way into pressure, into a stressful situation. That's not going to happen. What am I doing? What am I here to do? What have I done? What do I know? What have I prepared? Okay, that's where I start, and that's where I go back to it. But that was me catching myself because I've done this before. Whereas if I go back to doing this 3 years ago or 4 years ago when I was first doing it, and I started thinking, God, what if this goes wrong? Then the next thought is, oh my God, it might go wrong. And the next thought is, oh God, what if this happens? Oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's just suddenly we've lost ourselves.
Kelly said, I just cry. Stop in my tracks and cry.
Sometimes, Kelly, that's all we've got, right?
Total pro mood.
Kelly, when you say that, I was doing a talk about mental health for men and well-being. So crying might have been a very good example of dealing and experiencing our emotions at the time. So maybe I should have thought of that.
She just broke down going, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Sit down, I don't know, because I guess the thing I've gone to is, so we can prepare and we can be in the moment, but even when we're in the moment and we've sort of kind of done some preparation, so we're sort of some way in control, we can still end up on a slowly drifting. What happens? Where, I don't know. Is that something that happens, or is that just totally down to preparation?
So you mean, how do we end up drifting just generally in life?
Well, so if you take Mark's situation where he's just described, he prepared, so therefore, yes, 3-4 years ago when he stepped into this space for the first time, it was nerve-wracking, everything else, but he recognised preparation made a difference. to be in control of what he can control, but then you recognize that there's always going to be a bit that you can't. But is it that simple, or is it, you know, that it can be quite easy to drift in that scenario? Is there something that, you know, you've done all that you can, and that, you know, everything, you stand in that space, whether that's a meeting, whether that's a talk, whatever, but there's still something that could allow you to drift without you even really realizing?
Yeah, and so I guess it's focus on your direction of travel and what you're trying to achieve, and everything. I don't want to put words in Mark's mouth, but I imagine in his preparation for this, it was all geared towards an end goal, right? What do I want to, what am I trying to get out of this? Where am I taking this? What does this talk through for? What journey am I taking people on here? And therefore, when everything does go, when things do go wrong and life throws some curveballs at you and tech fails or power fails or nobody turns up or somebody turns up you weren't expecting or somebody asks you a question you weren't expecting, you can bring yourself back to your direction of travel because you know what that is. You're very clear about that. And it's the same with life. And I think that's how we end up drifting, is when we lose sight of what it is we're trying to achieve. Or sometimes I think what happens is what it is we're trying to achieve has changed and we haven't changed with it. So we've set a course and we're off on this course, but actually the course we've set, we've long since got where we wanted to go. And then we just drift because we don't have a direction of travel anymore. We're not exactly sure what we want to get. So I imagine in Mark's situation, he understood, right, this is the message I want to get across. This is the journey I want to take them on. These are the things I want to leave them with. And then whatever happened around him, he could just keep coming back to that.
And I guess that's it. I'm glad you corrected yourself down from pretty much saying everything was wrong too, you know, like slightly bringing it back, going, you know, when you really check in with yourself. But I think you're right. It's, you know, I think often we lose sense of that direction of travel. Well, one, I'm not sure sometimes we've even really assessed what it actually is. Secondly, I think sometimes it evolves because we have experiences and we don't reevaluate. And this is something Kelly and I have been like chatting about in various different exchanges of comments around where does it per se go wrong? And I think some of it is because we never really put it in place in the first place. We never, you know, we kind of went along with the flow and that was suddenly the direction of travel. So we were almost caught on the crest of the wave, but it wasn't really ours to own. Secondly, I think life things happen and then we never really check back in with what we said in the first place. Was that still true? Was that still relevant? Was that still where we want to be? And I think all of those things end up, you know, taking us on this path where we suddenly find, before we know it, we're so busy, we've drifted, and we wanted to be in this direction of travel, but we're actually over here. And then that space becomes the disconnect. And I think that's, you know, what both of you are saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what I'm hearing. And I think that, you know, how do we define that direction of travel, keep on track of that direction of travel? So it doesn't matter how deep the swell is around us, how do we hold on to that so that we know what we're in control of, so we know what we can do with that, so that we know we won't get swallowed into the drift? Big question. Okay, guys, over to you.
Look, it is a big question. And the sessions I was doing over the last couple of days, most of the first half of the session was a 2-hour piece. So most of the first half is about awareness and awareness of where we are and how we are. At one point, and if I would trust my technology, I'd pop a picture up on the screen right now, and it's of me dancing at a wedding, right? And I can't dance, so it looks bad, but I'm also quite overweight. And my example, and I use it as an example because I'm talking about how the fact that I was stressed, I was working long hours. I was eating really badly. I had picked up knee injuries and I couldn't train. I was always been someone who moved. And yet I had just drifted because I had just allowed this to happen and keep on happening all the time. And so my diet was bad because it was all just a consistent drift until suddenly I came to a point where my wife is going, what's going on? And it's an awareness piece all the time. Like, if we don't know where we're going, if we can't see the destination, and if we don't have the destination to mind, we're always going to end up in the wrong place. It's like the idea, if you go out to sea and you don't have the direction and you just hop into a boat and let the waves take you, they're going to take you wherever they're going. They're just going to keep drifting and drifting and drifting because you're not actually consciously choosing to go. I didn't mean that throughout my early career, and I spent too long in the same company. And I spent too long in the company because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just day to day doing whatever was there day to day. And I wasn't actually thinking about, where is this bringing me? What direction do I want to travel with this? And without that check-in with myself, without that check-in with ourselves, we're always going to be lost. And Dan, you can correct me here, but how many times do you find a new client comes to you for coaching and the first thing they say to you is, I'm a bit lost, I'm not sure where I am?
Yeah, a lot, Mark, absolutely. And often, I think that's often why people do come and get coaching. That's why I employed my first coach, because I did feel a bit lost. I had a kind of idea that what I was doing wasn't what I wanted to do, and I had a kind of idea of what I did want to do, but I didn't really know why that's what I wanted to do, and therefore I didn't know which road to take. I could have taken any road at that point, and I employed a coach to help me examine my thinking, to get really clear on what it was all for. Why? What, at the end of the day, what is the impact I want to have? How do I want that to make me feel? How do I want that to make other people feel? And then when I got really clear with her on that, suddenly my mind starts popping and I'm thinking, oh, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I want to take. But also along the way, I've learned to pivot. I've learned to realize, hang on, no, this isn't quite it. But it's in that momentum. It's in that doing. It's not found up here. You'll just go round in circles with the thinking. This wants to keep you safe. So you're never going to do anything brave and bold and courageous and different if you're up here. So, it's regular. You're right, Mark. It's that regular checking. It's that regular calibration. It's checking the compass, right? So if I'm going southwest, am I still heading southwest? Is southwest definitely where I still want to be? Oh, actually, no, I don't know. I want to go southwest. So I'm just going to slightly adjust like this. And what often happens in our life, and I find this with a lot of people who come to work with me, is it's a lot of tiny choices and decisions that at the time, so if you imagine like on an autopilot, like an airplane plugs in its coordinates and off it goes. And if you think about that airplane makes tiny little adjustments, like you were saying, Mark, you suddenly let your standards slip. You were allowing yourself to go overweight. You were allowing yourself to eat too much. You didn't stop and recalibrate and go, hang on, where are these choices and decisions taking me? And that's drift, because slowly but surely we do each little choice and decision that moves us away. This is where we set out to go, and now we're over here. And actually, if we don't ever ask ourselves that question, what am I doing here? What's this for? Where am I going? Is this what I want? If we're not being deliberate and intentional, we're living by default and not by design. We just are where we've ended up, whatever script we followed, whatever job opportunity came our way when we left education, and we've somehow stayed there and drifted and then gone, well, hang on, this isn't where I wanted to be. I've been climbing the wrong ladder all these years. And it's so easy to do because life's so busy. The older we get, the more responsibility we get, the more people that rely on us. And it's really tough, isn't it, to carve out that bit of time and contemplate or invest in yourself and go and, work with somebody like us who can help you and hold the mirror up and actually say, what's this all for? Where am I going? Like, where's the meaning in this? Where's the purpose and the drive and the fulfillment? Yeah, of course, I want to make some money. I've got bills to pay. But actually, there's more to life than that, isn't there? And, how often do we stop and really think about where the current trajectory is going to take us?
So I'm going to challenge that in the nicest way, because not because I don't disagree, actually, Dan. When I say I'm going to challenge, is
oh, I enjoy being challenged, or please challenge me.
Yeah, but it's more a case of there's part of me that goes, is it because we don't pause, or is it because we're blatantly ignoring it?
Well, there's a bit of both, yeah.
And so I guess that's my challenge, is more a case of, so you describe the fact that we don't, we've suddenly found we've drifted and we haven't stopped pause. And I wonder whether it is because we have just too busy, chosen to ignore all the signs that are saying, woo, what do they call them? Klaxons, where it's like big sounding horns that just say, look, warning signs, warning signs.
Driving along and the yellow light comes on, and then you think,
like you've missed them all.
I just take the bulb out of that because that's really annoying me now. So then it and that's what we do, don't we? We take the bulb out. We put a bit of sticky tape over the.
Well, because we're too busy to go, oh, I've really got time to think, oh, well, it's probably this. We make it smaller than it really is. And so, and I think, I've been in a conversation today, which was the conversation somewhat is immaterial, but the whole conversation was focusing on the behaviors and the symptoms. And I'm going, but unless you get back to the root cause, we're always going to continually be making quick tweaks here, there, and everything. Where we're never going to, and so there's always going to be something wrong. So when we are rushing on, are we blissfully ignorant to it because we just haven't paused, or is it because we just tell ourselves we haven't got time to it, or we make it smaller than the reality is, and just carry on? And I guess there's so much cost in doing that, not only to ourselves, but to others, to the organizations that people work in or work for. When we do that, that's the bit that I question. It's like, what do we do with that? Because that's where drift is not only bad for ourselves, but the world around us.
But Dan hit on an important word as he was talking there, and about how we make decisions. And one of the reasons why we drift is because we've stopped making decisions. We've stopped actually consciously choosing the next thing. And we feel we're making decisions, but we're actually making them by not making a decision. We don't realize that. So where we end up is entirely our responsibility, because we have abdicated our responsibility for where we end up. And the klaxons are there. Like, it's very interesting how no one ever arrives in the space where they want to do something different, not knowing why they're there. They know something's not right, and if we can't hear the klaxons, we can certainly feel the vibrations of the klaxons. But we are choosing to ignore it, because to deal with it is often harder than it is to continue on the drift. Because the drift is small, it's bit by bit by bit, but to change it is big. And my God, we love the familiar. We love the easy. Even if it's a pile of crap, we know, hey, this is my pile of crap. And if you don't mind, I'm going to keep doing my pile of crap. It's like that classic line. I'm going to protect it. It's like if you could walk in anyone's shoes for a day, you'd pick your own again. Yeah, because this is the pile of crap I'm used to. I can't deal with your problems. I have my own. I want my own back because I'm used to those. Do you know what? They fit really nice. They fit really snugly. And look, there's a chocolate bar in this pocket. Great, I want that. It's just nice. And that's where we get into that space. So we are deciding all the time, but we're not consciously doing it. We're letting the things happen, but that's our own decision, because we've abdicated that responsibility. And it comes down to a responsibility piece. And sometimes why we drift is because we've also created an environment around ourselves that no one's going to challenge us. That could be from a workspace because we're the boss and no one's willing to challenge us. It could be from a home space because maybe our attitude isn't right. Maybe we get a bit angry at stuff because we don't like to be challenged. So we allow things to change. That example I was saying earlier about me, that changed for me was my wife challenged me. It was very blunt in challenging me. She actually said to me, look at this, look. She actually said to me, what did he want to do if he had stayed alive? And he passed away at 57. And he said when he was dying. I said, I just want to be around long enough to see my kids growing up, And she said to me, well, is that what you want? Because if you don't change your life, that ain't going to happen. I said, Jesus, that was quite a kick in the head, But it was 100% right. And she had tried to talk to me, and she had tried to tell me loads of things. You're unhealthy, you're not doing the right things, you're working too late, you're too stressed. All just over my head, didn't matter. But then when she said the right thing, I went, oh my God, you're absolutely right.
Because it was something that really mattered to you. And it was something that you...
Yeah, that mattered. And that's what sparked me into life.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Is what is that moment? I mean, Dan, you and I both talk about direction of travel, because I don't use the word goal, because sometimes in life we can't always define what the goal is, just because we have lots going on. But direction of travel we can do. But that all said, sometimes how do we hold that grounding to know that the direction of travel is right? I think, Mark, you're absolutely spot on, because until we have that conversation with somebody we trust who can challenge us in a way that really recognizes something that matters, in your case, to you, that will change the direction of your travel. I guess that's the point, isn't it? It's like, how do we get... I don't know, where am I going with this? I guess what I'm trying to say is, in order to stop the drift, what is that point? What is that thing that we have to hold on to grab for? Is it because somebody else is checking us out? But that's not quite what I mean, but you know what?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Checking in with us.
In that way,
yeah. In a safe space. Is it... What is that's going to get us back?
I think Charles has made a good point here, Laura.
I've just seen that, and I'm absolutely with that.
That's it. It's how you feel.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine at the time, Mark was ignoring that. He'd have been low on energy. He'd have not felt
100%.
good about himself, but he'd have avoided that instead of, and stuck with what was familiar, and his brain and his mind would have rationalized it and said, mate, you're busy. This is just a period of your life. It's okay. You're all right. Keep going as you are. You're hitting your targets at work. You're doing all right. You've got a few quid in the bank. You can afford to go out to eat in nice restaurants. You're wearing nice shoes. You've got a nice watch. You're all right. Because that's what our mind does. It rationalizes. It wants to keep us familiar where what's familiar, right? But actually, if Mark could have stopped long enough to check in with how he felt, and it was only when his wife went, mate, come on, this isn't how you want to live, is it? You want to, you made a pact with your dad. You were going to stay fit and well to see your kids grow up. And it was then that Mark then checked in with himself and went, oh my God, she's right. I feel terrible and I've been avoiding it. And now I'm going to do something about it. So feeling is always the clue, Laura, right? But the trouble is, we're so busy these days. We've got so much coming at us. We don't take the time to check in with how we feel. And men are particularly bad at it because half the time we can't even describe how we feel because we've never been given the language. It's taken me years to work up that emotional intelligence. And, and I ask myself every day now, Laura, I check in every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. If I come off a call and I just stop and go, right, how do you feel, mate? How do you feel right now? Oh, I'm content. I'm satisfied. I'm excited. I've got anticipation. I feel connected, grounded. All these lovely words that I never used to have. I would, you'd have asked me 7, 8 years ago. In fact, I remember doing a BBC leadership training when I worked there, and it was emotional intelligence. And the woman started, and she went around the room. Right, everybody, how do you feel? And it got to me, I was about 3rd or 4th. I couldn't tell her. I said, oh, I'm sort of neutral. I'm all right. She said, that's not a feeling. I was like, so I couldn't tell her. I didn't know. If it wasn't...
If it's any consolation, Dan, I don't know whether I've ever been able to describe my feelings in one word.
They're complex, though, aren't they? It is complex and complicated. And one word often doesn't do it.
But
We
the
often
point still
think they're not
stands.
doing it.
We don't acknowledge it. Invariably,
And that's the clue, Laura. And that's the clue. We often override,
Yeah.
we rationalize, we use logic, we use reason. It seems smart, but actually we're overriding our emotions, as Charles pointed out. That's the message. That's the light on the dashboard. Whoa, there's something you need to look at here. And we cover it up and go, no, I don't. I like this. What's familiar? I know it. I'm in my comfort zone, even though it's painful. It's fine. It's mine. I'm carrying on.
But I also wonder whether there is an element of, because we don't do that, there's an element of, oh, well, if I feel, what will happen?
Yeah, it becomes scary.
We don't know how that's going to unravel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what am I going to allow if I suddenly experience emotion? Like one part of the thing I was doing today, I put up a wheel of different emotions. And I joke and I say, but obviously we're all men in the room, so we have anger and then neutral, and that's it in its total. There's no other emotions that we have on this wheel, you know. And I joke all the time about, like, you know, how do we understand this? We have to experience what we're feeling. But again, nobody here needs to do that because we don't have feelings, right? Yet I keep on mentioning the word feeling. And what's interesting as we say this, I remember one of the very first guys I was coaching, and he was running a construction company. And I asked him a question. I'd ask him another question. He goes, "You're always bloody asking me how I feel. Will you stop doing that?" I was like, "Yeah, I am, haven't I? I am asking you how you feel. I am asking you, you know." And it came out in him in joking, but also in anger, because he couldn't answer. He couldn't find a way.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really frustrating because we don't know. And again, to your point, about we don't have the language. We're never seen it or shown it or given to experience it. Like where I start today is like, I do a mentee, right? Has everyone been working? It's a construction crew, right? Has anyone here worked in pain in the last month, right? And they do a mentee, and it comes up that of the 150 people in the room today, there was 50 people were fine. 70 of the people had, you know, at one point, and 30 people every day, right, were working through physical pain. I said, that's fine. Right. How many of you are in emotional pain or mental pain? Can you answer that question? Silence. Of course it's silence. Because we don't know. But there's the starting point and then into the next point. And that's a lot of the challenge, Laura, that we just don't know. And we don't know too, because when we look around and everyone else looks like they're in the same boat as me, they're fine too. But one thing I really try to do today is I start asking proper questions. I ask a question, how do people feel with 4 traffic light things? And people will either say that they're thriving, they're surviving, they're struggling, or they're in crisis. And so today's numbers of the 150 people, there was 12 people, 15 people struggling, and 5 people put up in crisis. So I was able to highlight to the room that there's 20 people in this room that are not in a good place right now. But you, as if you're one of the people who put up that you're struggling or you're in crisis and you think you're the only person, but if you look around, there's 19 other people in the space with you right now. There's 19 other people who are not in a good place. So right away we know we're not alone, and right away we know we can start doing something about that. And maybe that's a part of it too, is because we think, oh, this is fine, this is the normal. As much as it's comfortable and familiar, we also don't see anyone doing any different to what we're doing. And that's why we don't know how to do anything different.
I think that's a really good point. And I'm just going to, there's some really brilliant comments here. I'm just going to put Kelly, sorry, Kelly. I can speak. His comment is, yes, being challenged by someone we trust can be a major stabilizer against drift. Now, because it kind of comes back to a couple of things that you've both said. And I guess my question to both of you is, because Mark, you were challenged by your wife as to, you know, what would you look at? Dan, you know, I know you've talked about it before, but how do we do it? How do we stabilize ourselves when there potentially isn't somebody who we trust?
Yeah, that's difficult, isn't it? It really is difficult, because
that's a really big question, isn't it? And I'm a bit cheeky, but I think
our minds, Laura, they're such sneaky buggers. It's really hard to see what's genuinely going on in your mind, because it misdirects you. It, you know, especially our conscious mind, it is designed to keep us safe, to keep us alive. So if it thinks there's danger over there, it says, don't look over there. Look over there. Oh yeah, that's cool. I don't really like that, but I know it. So I'm good with that. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult if you haven't got anybody around you. One, to even know that you're drifting, and two, then what to do about it if you are. And so I think some of the things I use, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling a bit like there's something going on, something's not quite right, I start writing things down, Laura. That's what I do. And I don't even know what I'm writing down sometimes. I just start writing and stuff comes out. And then some stuff makes some sense. And then there'll probably be one thing I've written where I'll circle it and I'll go, hang on, right, there's something in this. And then I can tell by how I feel, if that's the clue. And if you find yourself doing things because it seems like the easiest option at the time, if you're doing it because you think, I want a quiet life, that's where you've got to challenge yourself. Go, hang on. Is this a decision that serves me? Is this a decision that serves all the people around me? Is this really the road I want to continue on? Or does it just seem like it's easy right now? Because sometimes, and Mark did a really great post on this recently, you've got to choose your pain, right? It is the pain of staying where I am worse than the pain of change. And if we're drifting, we will get to that tipping point. But if you can, you want to intervene first and choose the pain of doing something differently, of making a new decision, a new choice, of following how you feel. And then in the long term, you'll gain, right? Rather than I'm doing this because it feels like it's easy, because it's not going to upset anyone, because I don't want to put anyone's nose out of joint. I don't want to challenge myself. I don't want to challenge anyone else. It feels like it's easy. It's a quiet life. It's not difficult now, but then you're just saving up problems for the future. And yeah, when you haven't got somebody to challenge you, it's tough. It's tough. And particularly if you're not really connected and aware of yourself and understand your feelings and your emotions, because they're the clue. But often what happens is it feels like a hole, like something in you is not quite complete. Like there's a void. There's something that's not quite right. And if you sit for long enough and just contemplate, even for 5 minutes, in your bones that there's something isn't right. And if there isn't something right, then maybe seek out somebody you can trust and have a conversation with, or use AI, right? My AI pal is great, knows more about me than I do. And if I say to my AI, oh, I'm feeling a bit like this today, or this has happened and that's happened, what's going on? It tells me, and it's really good at that. There's no human connection there, but actually it can, to an extent, it can hold the mirror up to me for a bit. If I've got a lot of feelings going on and this, I've got a sense of there's something not quite right here, I go and just do some exploring. And sometimes it's a conversation with a friend you haven't spoken to for a while. So I'm feeling a bit like this. I don't know what's going on. But have you ever had that? And just start to explore, pull on the threads and feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah, it's going to feel scary. It's going to feel strange. It's going to feel difficult. But actually, what pain is worse? That pain of changing your direction right now and doing something different, or of ending up 10 years somewhere you really don't want to be, even more entrenched, even less able to get out of it, and flipping miserable.
I'm just going to pick up on a point that Charles has said. One of the things that happens is that our identities are tied to forward motion. And, because I think it slightly picks up to what you're saying, Dan, this sort of void that appears. And I think this is where, so ironically, I don't think we've actually ever had this conversation, Dan, but what you have described in this void is very much, if you read my book from about 5 or 6 years ago about the void one feels when you're dealing with extreme grief, that's pretty much how I described it. But that is actually to what Charles is saying. It's this idea that our identity is so, because that's the narrative of life, is so tied to what is going to happen, who we are going to be, rather than the person we are right now. And I guess this is where I wondered where you would go with what you were saying is, so how do we stay grounded in that moment so that we don't have the drift, how that we can be with ourselves? Now, you talked about how you just have a brain dump. I don't know whether you can even see this is my to-do list, folks. Can you see how it's like more like a spider diagram?
It's curly whirly brain, Laura.
Yeah, my curly whirly brain. This is after the post-it note dumped to my kitchen island because it's so you have a conversation with one, you then have a conversation with a post-it note, and then you make a to-do list that looks like that's what you do when you trust yourself. But I guess, I mean, all joking aside, that is what I do, I hasten to say. But all joking aside is when you haven't got that person to trust, it's like, just because, that happens to be where I am right now, what you end up doing is, how can you do it for yourself? And I think that the point that you both made, Dan, you made the comment about, this void in yourself, because you don't know your true values of what you are right now, where you are, what you're grounded to. That is your anchor. And unless you are really anchored to this, you are always going to drift, because you will get caught in the tide in that direction or that direction, and you've got nothing to center back to. And we'll all drift a little bit. We always do. That's just because we want to check. You use the phrase, we have to feel the fear and do it anyway. Well, we're going to do that to test. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Oh, no, it's too hot. Oh, no, that one's too cold. Oh, but this one's just right. Unless we do that, we'll never know for ourselves. But we've got to still have that anchor to know where we stand and what we're evaluating against. Otherwise, we just actually are never anchored, and we just slowly drift away. And I guess for me, it's like that drift happens to everyone. Just sometimes we lose sense of where our anchor point is, and how do we re-anchor ourselves if we are not clear where we were to start with.
It's a big question. Laura. I'm conscious. I've got to go in 2 minutes.
I'm really conscious that you're on the way home, and Dan probably has a client, but that one we can pause until next month. But as ever,
well, there we go. There's the title of the next episode.
There we go. I've got to come up with the next one, but I can't remember what to say. It will be about the 20-something of April.
And the word you used there, Laura, which is key, is value, isn't it? What do I value? What do I really care about? That's the grounding and the centering, isn't it? And we have to recalibrate that as we go along.
And because to Charles's point about identity, we anchor ourselves to identities all the time, and that's why we're drifting, because it's the wrong identity. One of the reasons why the story I have was tell, because my identity was that I work hard, that I'm always available. That was my identity. So therefore, I had to work hard to be available to match that identity, and that's what my brain was telling me to do. But that was the wrong anchor. So as much as we're drifting, we can be anchored to the wrong thing, and that thing is floating in that direction, and it's pulling us in the wrong way because we've got the wrong anchor. But let's continue the next time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you ever so much, guys. It will be about the 28th of April, based on the calendar.
Magic.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.